Hey, what's going on, champs? I'm Aaron Deliosa. Welcome to an Immigrant's Life podcast, my podcast about immigrants and immigration and everything in between. Thank you for listening and downloading the show, and thank you for supporting my dad.
Welcome back, Immigrant Nation. Another week, another new episode. You know what I've realized? I always thank you guys, but I don't check in on you enough. What I mean is I don't ask how you guys doing. So I want to apologize and I want to ask, how are you guys? This year is ending in a few days. How's your 2022 has been? I'd love to hear from you and all the things that happened to you this 2022 and your plans for 2023 as well. Please let me know how you guys doing by reaching out on all the social media accounts we have. Our handle is @AnImmigrant'sLife. You can also email us at @AnImmigrant'sLife@yahoo.com. I'd really love to hear from you, so please reach out and send me some cool messages and maybe your goals for 2023. Speaking of hearing, if you like listening to this podcast, why don't you go ahead and subscribe on YouTube and all the podcasting platforms? And while you're there, please give us a 5-star rating as well as a cute and sweet review. It will help us so considerably and it wouldn't cost you anything at all. That's that. Now, let's talk about the episode. Our guest this week is a visual artist that uses the technology of the future to reach back to his culture's past. Immigrant Nation, I enjoyed this conversation so much. It felt like I was talking to a long-lost cousin, you know? In this conversation, we got dark, we got deep, and of course, we laughed a lot. And I hope you enjoy listening to this one as much as we're recording it. I'm rambling, so let's get to the point. Without further ado, let's get into the show. Isa, dalawa, tatlo. Today's guest is a designer, a photographer, and an illustrator. He's as brave as Hemchu and as creative as King Suryavarman II. Everyone, please welcome Sokai Trung. Hi there, my man.
I'm good. How are you?
Good. How's your day?
Day's been so far so good. You know, it's been busy trying to wrap up some work stuff for the holidays, but can't complain.
Of course, you have to stay grateful.
Absolutely.
By the way, I practice this. You tell me if it's wrong. Chum Rip Suwo Bong Sokai.
That is really good. It's Chumrip Suwa. But it totally understood it. That's really awesome.
Thank you. And Akun for coming on the podcast.
Oh, of course. No, thank you for having me.
Before we continue, please tell the Immigrant Nation where they can reach you or if you want to promote anything.
Yeah, absolutely. You can reach me on Instagram. It's at Sokai Yoon, SOKAIYOON. From there, you can go to some of the LinkedIn, the link tree. It connects you to my LinkedIn as well as my Discord server. But Instagram is the main way you can contact me.
Before we recorded, I thought your name was Sokai Yoon, and you said that's your artist name. Is there a meaning to that name, or is there a history?
Yeah. So Yoon in Cambodian means Vietnamese. So it's just a play on my Vietnamese last name because there's like some tensions in the Cambodian community of identifying as Khmer Krom. Khmer Krom are indigenous Cambodians that live in the southern part of Vietnam. So that is me. And it's also to honor a good friend of mine who's Korean. His last name is Yoon. He passed away 4 years ago. So it's a way to kind of like tie in his memory.
Oh, rest in peace. Your last name, you said it's Vietnamese, but you're Cambodian. Is your dad Vietnamese or?
No, they're all Cambodian. So Khmer Krom, that there's the southern part of Vietnam, you know, that kind of entails like Ho Chi Minh City or Saigon. A long time ago was a part of Cambodian land, and due to like just poor politics in just a summarized version is due to poor politics on the Cambodian side, they allowed Vietnamese merchants to kind of establish a trading hub in Prey Nacor, which is now modern day Ho Chi Minh City. And the Vietnamese keep flooding in, overpopulated that particular city to a point where, due to poor politics, Vietnam annexed that part of Cambodia into Vietnam. So there was like millions of Cambodians that's been displaced by this annexation, and so for them to live in Vietnam, they had to adopt Vietnamese names and Vietnamese language. So it's kind of like Vietnamize, themselves.
Do you get prejudiced by Cambodians because you have a Vietnamese last name?
Oh yeah, growing up, especially here in America during the '90s, the fact that we do have a Vietnamese name and that my parents can speak Vietnamese as well. We usually get ostracized by the mainland Cambodians, and so it gets to a point where here in the city of Atlanta we have like 3 temples. One, there's like a main Cambodian temple. There's a temple for Khmer Krom people, and there's another temple just for the sake of convenience because it's like way further south.
Which one do you go to?
I go to 2. I go to the Khmer Krom one. I go to the main one. It's like the tensions have kind of eased over time, between Khmer Krom and mainland Cambodians, especially in the city of Atlanta. It's just the older generation who kind of held on to like these identity politics, while my generation, the younger generation, we just identify as Cambodian.
The line is, "You're not Cambodian enough."
Exactly. Yes.
It's so dumb.
Very, very. Not only that, I was born in Thailand, so.
My God, you're not one of them.
I'm neither one. so the intersectionality crisis happened really, really early for me.
Oh man, yeah, I read that you're a refugee baby.
I am refugee baby. My mom popped me out of a bamboo thatch, in a camp. So, while a lot of the other kids, they had like medical equipment, they had like smooth transitions. Mine was a really rough one, but I'm here.
Hey, that's what matters, right?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Obviously, there's a war. That's why she was a refugee, your mom. What war was happening back then?
So in like the late 60s, early 70s, it was the Cambodian Civil War that led to the Khmer Rouge taking power. And the Khmer Rouge, they wanted to convert Cambodia into a communist government. So they went on I would say it's like a genocidal rampage, but they started killing off like people that were educated, creatives, entertainers, like influencers, people who were trying to avant-garde Cambodian culture during that time. And so my mom, she had to escape. And so she fled to parts of Vietnam, a part of Vietnam. And that's when the Vietnam War started brewing up, and tensions between Cambodia and Vietnam was also brewing up. So a lot of the Cambodians in that part of Vietnam escaped to go towards the refugee camps in Thailand.
Where was Dad?
He lived in, it's called Klang. That's the Cambodian name for it, but he lived in Vietnam. He lived in a city called Sokai Trung.
When your mom was being a refugee, where is he?
Oh no, she didn't meet my dad until she went to Vietnam.
Okay, but
yes,
she needed to get pregnant first.
Yeah. So the thing was, during that time, a lot of Cambodian couples, they didn't marry out of love; they married to survive. So when she escapes fighting, she's from proper Cambodia. She was fighting, and when she escaped to go to Sok Chang, she found someone there, and when they're about to escape, she just clinged on to who is my dad, and yeah, they got into Cambodia, kind of like try to survive through there, and then move towards like the refugee camps, and got pregnant on the way.
How old your mom was then?
She was like 19. She was really young.
Oh my God, what a beast!
Yeah. It was tough. Before that, she had my brother already, so that was like 3 years before I was born.
So how many siblings do you have?
I only have one, but
Okay.
But he passed away in like 1997.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
It's okay. Stuff happens.
Yeah, I read that too, that if it wasn't for his death, you would have probably been in jail or dead as well.
Yeah, growing up in Atlanta, so a lot of Cambodians during this time when they fled to the United States or sought asylum in the United States. Most of them moved to either Tacoma, Washington, Long Beach, Lowell, Massachusetts, or New York City. But there was a couple of us that moved to city of Atlanta, which is like a weird place for a Cambodian to be or to grow up. But yeah, during that time, like in the late '80s, excuse me, early '90s, there's a lot of racial tension, between the blacks and whites. So a lot of the Cambodians, we move on the east side of the interstate, I-75, Jonesboro South, majority black. So we moved in there. They didn't know, didn't know who we were, or they couldn't identify who we were. So they weren't technically racist. They were like verbally, they just like verbally make fun of us, but they weren't physical. And so we actually moved out of there because of the crime rate in general. Then it wasn't like towards us. It was just the crime rate in general in that area was so high that my parents kind of feared living there. So we moved towards the other opposite side, which is Hapeville with a P, Hapeville. And it's the home to the first 24-hour Chick-fil-A. so, so, so we moved there, but it was like majority white, very, very zealous Christian. We lived under the Bible Belt. Now they were really, really physical with us. They a lot of the kids, they abused us, they threw rocks at us, they called us all sorts of names. Yeah, it was a tough time. That's when a lot of the Cambodian kids, we banded together to kind of protect ourselves and make sure that we were able to just live a proper childhood. And then one day, one of the kids, the white kids, they got sexually physical, with one of our friend's sisters, and that's when things just started popping off, and we got to like a huge brawl, huge fight. My brother and I, we got severely hurt, and that's when my mom moved us. Like, no, we can't be here. So we moved further south towards Clayton County, which is about 10 miles south of Atlanta, where we lived, and that's when the racial tensions died down for sure. Clayton County was majority white, but now it's like majority black. And since we don't have any more problems, now it's just Cambodian people within our whole group, our whole this great gang that we built up. They just got power hungry. They started, having a power trip. And so they were trying to find ways to oust some of the more stronger contenders in the group, which happened to be my brother. And that's when I found out that we were Krom, and that's how they started segregating all the Krom kids from this group. And so we got ousted and we separated. We started our own gang called the Rascals, which is associated with the Tiny Rascals and in the West Coast. And so they started their own gang. The mainland Khmer started their own gang called the Bloods. But for some reason, there's two blood gangs within that group, and they started beefing with each other for some reason. It was really weird. But yeah, so we were in that gang life for a little bit. My brother, he felt invincible, like he was a fighter. I wasn't. I was more of just lay low, just following my brother's footsteps. He got into some really, really shady stuff, dealing with drugs, money, stuff like that. And yeah, it got to a point where there was like huge tensions between some of the rival gangs, and he got murdered. He was killed by another Cambodian person. So it was devastating especially for me. And when my mom doing her best, working two jobs, trying to take care of us. Now she's down to one kid, and it got to a point where like the neighborhood we lived in was so rough. My mom was like, every time me and my brother go outside, she automatically assumed we were dead until we came back. That was her thinking. But now one of them is gone, and I was following his footsteps. Like just being part of the gang. I was a runner, meaning I would transport money and drugs because I was so like I would say I was nerdy, but I didn't fit like the whole gang profile. I don't have any tattoos. My brother's like, don't get any tattoos, just look like that, so you can go like under the radar to these particular places. And to this very day, I still don't have any tattoos. So but if it wasn't, it's kind of like a cruel destiny. If he didn't pass, I would have followed his footsteps, and I would have started dealing drugs myself, end up in jail, or would have been ousted by one of my rivals. But I got out of that really quickly because I realized at his funeral, none of his friends, none of the people in his gang even showed up to his funeral.
What?
Yeah, and it's like, and I just saw it as like, I thought this gang was family, but just that I started realizing like they're just a whole bunch of phonies. Like they didn't really respect my brother like that. They wanted power too, and I started realizing like what's up with this like power trip within our community. And yeah, so I went out. So I got out of it. My mom, she's a aspiring photojournalist. She didn't become a photographer, but she was an aspiring photojournalist. And she had a camera that she kept with her that she hid throughout this entire time because she thought one day she would be able to pursue photography in the United States, but she didn't get that chance. Gave me her, it was a manual film camera. It's a Canon FTB. She taught me how to use it. Like roll of film, you got to crank it every time to get an exposure. You get 24 to 36 exposures. And she turned one of our closets to a dark room. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. She taught me how to use the camera, and that's what I started doing. But photography got expensive for her because, like all these films that she used to have, back home, it was like accessible, it was cheap. But like a Fuji Astia, like 50 or 100, it's like $9 for a canister. And she taught me how to use like Sprinter and Developer, and those were like $30 like per gallon. So it got to a point where as I got older, my mom invested, she saved us some money to buy me like a digital camera. It's like 1.5 megapixels, high tech at the time.
Oh yeah, like it takes you like 5 minutes to process.
Yeah, exactly. Like 32 megabyte memory card. It was like a Hewlett Packard, and it came with the great grand uncle of Adobe Photoshop, which is Adobe Photo Deluxe, and that's when I started getting into design, like making making basic like birthday cards and stuff for my mom, and that's how I got into design. And then at school, middle school, I joined the yearbook club, and then I joined Technology Student Association because they had access to like the Adobe. It was called Creative Suite at the time. It was just Adobe Photoshop 7. It was in CS or like CS 22 or 23. And I just became good at it. And yeah, won my first like national competition, and like I feel like design is what I wanted to do.
That's amazing. Where did mom learn how to take pictures and develop them?
Her friend, bless her soul, she passed away. She was killed. During the genocide, but she came from a more wealthier family, and her family they did a lot of trading, and so they had like a palette of like just cameras and film, and so the sister was able to take one, and she's like not sister, I'm sorry, her friend took one, and she's like really close friends with my mom, and she saw that photography, like she kept taking pictures of my mom because my mom was beautiful, and my mom was like, I want to take pictures too, like teach me. And then she started teaching her, and then for her 14th birthday, gave her a camera of her own, which was the FTB, and that's the one that she kept. And but she was able to take photos and develop it with her, but she's had to, she wasn't able to recover any of her film that she took. So that's how she started. She wanted to be a photographer, but because of the war and stuff, she had to like cut that like really short.
Before mom moved or escaped the Khmer Rouge, how was their socioeconomic life?
Well, my mom, she was a farmer. My dad was a farmer too. They lived in the countryside. Svai Ding is like about 40 minutes away from the Vietnamese border on the eastern side. But she loved it. She herded water buffaloes. That was her thing as a kid. And my dad, he was a Buddhist monk. He was at a temple.
They're allowed to get married?
Well, once he left the temple, yes. But during that time, he was a monk. Only because it was the only place where he could learn how to read and write. Because my mom, she can speak Khmer, but she's not able to write it. So she came from a really like a very rural family, like herding water buffaloes, raising green peppers with her father, and my dad was a monk. So their socioeconomic life it wasn't that great, but it gave them like unfortunately for the people in the city, like the Khmer Rouge didn't hit these cities until like later on.
So we referenced Khmer Rouge. I did a deep dive on them because
Yeah.
in the Philippines, when I was going through school, that's all we talk about. That's it. Like maybe like one page,
Yeah.
And I felt like, oh, I should learn more. And so obviously Khmer Rouge took over Cambodia for 4 years.
Yeah, about 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and just decided to like, you know, free start to zero, as they say.
Year zero. Yeah. Before that, it was a lot of strife between like a U.S. backed political government by General Long Nol. He was fighting the Khmer Rouge. We also have King Sihanouk, they had loyalists, so like just like three parties trying to like take power over Cambodia. But the bombings that the U.S. Operation Menu and there's Operation the Freedom Deal, they dropped a crap load of bombs on the eastern border of Cambodia. And also that's why my mom had to leave, because they bombed her village and my mom lost like most of her family through the bombing. She only has like 3 surviving sisters now.
Ooh.
And so my mom hated like the U.S. for doing that. A lot of people who were hit by the bombs they hated that for doing that. That's when the Khmer Rouge saw like, oh, the U.S. bombed our country, and they're backed by Lon Nol, and that's how a lot of traction happened within the Khmer Rouge. They use that as a friction point for them to like get more people, to rally more people, and yeah, that's how they came into power. They just like took Phnom Penh by storm, and yeah, 4 to 5 years of the Ankar, as they call it.
Is there still Khmer Rouge? Are they still like? Is there a group still alive?
I hope not. But they were remnants of the Khmer Rouge up until like 1999. So it was pretty recent. But like Pol Pot, he passed away in 96, and there were still people who still believed in the Khmer Rouge during that time. But Khmer Rouge kind of like lost complete power like during 1999. So we have memorials and whatnot of what happened, but at the same time, like Cambodia's in a place where they just want to move forward and like they're ready to heal and get back to where they started.
How's Cambodia now politically? Is it more stable now, or still the usual?
It's a little bit more stable. I'm pretty sure the politics in Southeast Asia is. I'm not familiar with it compared to the United States, but there's a lot of economic growth. There's a lot of like other nations coming in, supporting Cambodia, building, helping them with infrastructure and whatnot. Because when I traveled to Cambodia in '96 to go to my mom's village, the Khmer Rouge was still in power, but there's like dirt roads, bridges were still destroyed. So we had to take 2 ferries to get to my mom's village, So what should have been a 6-hour drive was like a day and a half trek,
Oh my God.
But now like the roads are way better, and we can get there within like 4.5 hours, by car. But back then it was really rough. But yeah, Cambodia now it's been like 30-40 years of just like slow growth, but now we're picking back up. So it's stable, yes, but the election is coming up in May. I have no idea what's going on, because I think Hun Sen is stepping down. So there is a lot of tension happening with like the other political parties, which I try not to dive into much, but people so far have seen Cambodia as like a peaceful place to live now.
That's good, because we just had our election in the Philippines last year, and it's like we voted Pol Pot's son.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, of course, the father, who's Marcos, the original.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't kill like 1,000 like Pol Pot, but he killed a lot.
Killed a lot, yeah. Or anyone who like went against him.
And yeah, anyone, how it is, like, oh,
Yeah.
Sokai, you're not believing in me. Guess what? You're dead. And then obviously he passed away. He has this son that has been knocking on the door for since his dad passed away. And
Mm.
to be honest, growing up in the Philippines, I knew it wasn't if, it's gonna be when. And that when was last year. And he won. It was
Wow.
like landslide too.
Landslide, yeah.
I was like, guys, it was like 1986 when we kicked them out. There's people alive that could say, oh, by the way, I was tortured by these people. And
Wow.
that's what it is now, you know?
It's not too different from your political like strife in the Philippines because I think Hun Sen used to be part of the Khmer Rouge. He's like a prime minister now. I don't know anything. I don't know too much about his politics, but he's stepping down and his son's taking over. So
They never let go. They never let go.
they'll never let go of that power, you know. But so it's kind of like you can live peacefully as long as you don't say anything bad about us, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I know how that goes. Yeah, definitely. I watched one of your IG live and you guys talk about the subject Cambodians are black people of Asia, which is weird because I heard that too about Filipinos.
Philippines,
Yeah.
yeah. It's I feel like I would say it's weird, but it's there's like some humor into it because like growing up here in Atlanta, like you know, people are familiar with like you know Filipinos and the Cambodian people. So someone's like, "Hey, are you Khmer?" It's like, "No." "Oh, you got to be Filipino then." You know. Well, are you Filipino? "Oh, you got to be Khmer then." It's like vice versa.
Oh,
But
so it's either Filipino or Kamaya.
yeah, because I mean, there's a lot of like similar features that you know that we share. But it's the fact that you know a lot of us, a lot of the Khmer people, we grew up in majority. Well, I can only speak for the city, for Atlanta, but we grew up in a majority like black community,
Mhm.
and there were really, especially like in the '90s, like after we left Hateville, the black community was really welcoming towards us, you know, and so we became, you know, they welcomed us, and you know they supported us, and you know we party a lot, like we're pretty much like family, and. And when we realized they love Hennessy as much as we do, you know, it was like overnight family, you know. But there's a growing Filipino community here too, and there's one thing we like to do is like Khmer folks, Filipinos, like they love to DJ. We love to sing karaoke, you know. You know, we love playing basketball, and you know, and we are really like tied to our cultural roots, and I think that's what kind of defines. That's what kind of what bonds Cambodians and Filipinos, you know, especially here in Atlanta together, because I didn't know like Kamai in Tagalog means hand, you know. So there's like a lot of words that I mean, there's a lot of things that we share, but yeah, it's just because a lot of Cambodian folks, you know, we're like brown skinned, like a little bit more darker on the darker side. They saw us like as the blacks of Asia, the way we talk and our mannerisms, you know, are like growing up like listening to hip hop, you know, like a lot of it, they viewed us as like be ghetto Asians, unfortunately, but it didn't really bother us because we like you know being immigrants in the United States, we just wanted to be accepted. And me growing up, I wasn't accepted by my own community at all because of me being Krom. So a lot of the Cambodian people that were outcasted, as well as the Filipinos that were outcasted from their communities, you know, we hung out with the black community, and it kind of like brought us in and treated us like family. And so yeah, most of our mannerisms are like that. But yeah, it's you go to the West Coast as well. You'll start seeing similarities of like Filipinos and Cambodians, like in terms of like their mannerisms and like how they grew up. You know, like we grew up in, I'll say like we grew up in poverty. We're hard workers. We do our best to, you know, we have like this survival mentality. We do our best. We're like really resilient people, and I feel like that we all share that connection. And so therefore, I feel like even when I go to the Bay Area, like, oh, he's got to be Khmer, and then they start speaking Tagalog, like I knew it, you know. It's either or, you know. So I think that's where that stereotype comes from my point of view.
Yeah, definitely. I completely see that. I mean, if I see you in the street, you're walking, I'm like, this is Filipino. This guy's Filipino. I can
Yeah.
smell him. You know what I mean? Unless you do something like a mannerism that like off, I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
then I'm like, okay, he's not. But most of the time, like, okay, this guy, he looks like my people. And then sometimes then I'll figure out like, oh, he's Cambodian. He's still my people.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, we're still brown.
Yeah. No, we're all from Southeast Asia, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was funny because one time my wife has a coworker and she's Cambodian.
Uh-huh.
And I saw her. I'm like, man, she's Filipina. Definitely Filipina. There's no way. And then she starts speaking French, like fluent. I'm like, oh no, she is not Filipina.
Yeah. Cambodia was like a French colony at some point, and so a lot of the city people like learned French. My mom knows French too. So yeah.
She still speaks it?
A little bit, but not as much. Not as much as her sisters. She's ever since growing up here and needing to learn English, like she speaks more English now.
Did they force Cambodians to speak French, the French colonizers?
Only in the city, because you know, like a lot of the universities, even to this day, there's a lot of like even the creative schools or the art schools is like French operated still. But like you want to go to school, like you want to get access to some of the best education, they were mostly like French professors. So learning French was during that time was almost like a necessity to kind of like navigate or scale in the city. And there was I won't say programs, but a lot of Cambodians, like well-off Cambodians, would travel to France and like learn over there, and that's where they would learn French as well.
Okay, that makes sense. That's one thing with the Philippines, because we're colonized by Spain, but they never taught us Spanish.
Yeah, it's I heard, and not only that, like I don't know if you're into like the Khmer Rouge military, but there's we had a Filipino general that served under the Khmer military. I forgot his name though. But no, he was a high ranking officer.
What was he doing there?
I have no idea. But
Filipinos are all over the place, huh?
Absolutely. Going back to like Cambodian history, like I don't know too much about it, but just reading some of the blurbs, especially during I forgot which era. It was like in the early 1800s. One of the Cambodian kings wanted to Christianize the Cambodian nation, and he allowed the Spaniards to come in and do what they need to do, and that's when the Spaniards brought more Filipinos into Cambodia, and there was like this Cambodian Spanish Civil War that happened, and the Filipinos were like they fought against us because of the Spaniards, but it's really interesting how like this mix of people that grew up in Cambodia that you'll never think of. But yeah, it's really, I'm pretty sure there's like a small like, budding Filipino population in Cambodia somewhere.
Oh, definitely. Also, even like languages. I don't know much about Cambodian language or Khmer, but Bong is like to show respect, right?
Yeah, Bong is something, yeah, it's pretty much like someone you would call like that's older than you out of respect, yes.
Yeah. I have an uncle. We call him Bong.
Oh wow!
But his name is not Bong. Like we always been calling him Bong. I don't know why. His name is I forgot his name. Like whatever, something Spanish. But we call him Bong. That's why when I read about the Bong word, I'm like, whoa, this makes sense.
Yeah, like I feel like in Southeast Asia, there's like these identifiers of like you have like Ninong, or like Ninong for us is Ming, and Kuni, I think Kuni is like Bong, the equivalent of Bong. So it's really interesting to hear how our cultures like show respect to our elders. But for me, like I'm not as traditional as my parents, so if there's an older person that doesn't respect me or like does not, or just like scolds me or like patronize me all the time, I would always call them by their first name. I would never call them like Bong or Boo, like, hey Richard, how are you doing? So it's just so like the generational traumas of our parents, it got converted into like generational trauma, and we as kids we dealt with that, and they thought that like rearing us as they would in Cambodia would work as we lived in America, but totally does not work at all. Like American culture is so much different from Cambodian culture. So a lot of their traditions and social mores did not properly translate for us, as we grew up in America. And so as we were dealing with their generational trauma, we had generational trauma of our own, that that we're building up from like racism, bullying, dealing with other ethnic groups. Because I don't know if you know, during that time with the Cambodian Civil War, following that you had the Vietnamese Civil War. Then following that you had like the Laotian Civil War, and so there's like so many civil wars happening in Southeast Asia that a lot of ethnic groups did not trust each other, and so for me and my generation, our parents told us like, oh, don't trust the Vietnamese, don't trust Thai people, don't trust the Lao people, like, because there's like so many atrocities that happen between each ethnic groups during these wars. That's where that thinking comes from. But a lot of us, growing up, we didn't know why they would say that, because we didn't learn that in history class. But as we get older, we didn't really care. Like, this person's cool. We just want to hang out, and they treat us like family, treat us like brothers, and therefore, that stigma is broken with our generation. But it's just the fact that our parents always wants to be like proper Cambodians, like, oh, like act more Cambodian, act this, but they never show us, they never teach us.
Yeah.
Like
what do they mean when proper Cambodian?
That I still do not know to this day. I remember my dad once told me, like, I wish you would act more like a Cambodian man. I was like, I would act like a Cambodian man if you would show me, but he never showed me. And so also a lot of people in my generation, we grew up, my father wasn't in the picture as much, and that was like a common theme amongst like Cambodian sons. So a lot of it we have to like kind of like raise ourselves, or kind of like define what being a Cambodian man is to us, and so so yeah, it gets to a point where a lot of Cambodian kids, especially like me, as we grew up, we kind of found, I won't say it's like what's so good about being Khmer, like our parents, like, they drank a lot, sometimes they were abusive, and go through what I went through. I was ousted by the main Cambodian community. I was accepting the Vietnamese community. Like, then what am I? So there's a lot of Cambodian people in America who thought, who had the same sentiments I did growing up. They weren't able to associate with their identity as much, and so especially like during COVID, especially like platforms like yours, just Instagram, a lot of kids they're able to reclaim their identity without having by detaching themselves from their local community, because a lot of us didn't get a chance to travel, and so we always thought, oh, Khmer culture is pretty much defined by our local community, and that's what we thought all other Khmer communities are like. But then when you start traveling to these different places, these different conclaves, it's totally different. Like, their mannerisms are different, how they grew up is different. It made me more, like, it piqued my interest in, like, I want to learn more about, Cambodians in Long Beach, or Cambodians in Philadelphia, and how they were raised. And so it got me thinking about, oh, Khmer people are different everywhere, outside of Cambodia. And now with Cambodia, back on with economic growth, and kind of like going back on a path of redefining our arts and culture, they're going on a different wave compared to what the KhAmericans are doing. Like, it's beautiful to see how we as the Khmer diaspora are shaping Cambodian culture outside of Cambodia, while Cambodians in Cambodia are shaping culture, based on, just based there. And at some point, it's going to be beautiful when we all are able to come together and kind of combined, and, create like a stronger foundation for, Cambodians around the world. But I know I'm going off on a tangent.
No.
But yeah, it's really weird how it took the internet for a lot of us to realize, like, oh, like, Khmer toxicity just came from my parents and the local community, but there's other Cambodians who are going through the same thing, and we have the power now to kind of like redefine like community for us,
Definitely. I like what you said, that Cambodian people that are in Cambodia are, pushing through and improving the culture. And then there's Cambodian people from Atlanta and then Long Beach and whatever. Like, it's like, because your parents, Cambodian parents, when they moved to Atlanta, they were stuck in their mind this specific Cambodia.
Yes.
So they're like a time machine, right?
Yep.
And they have this seed, and it grows and becomes you and future Khmer people. And then with the culture of Atlanta and the Khmer people, it'll be a different Khmer, right?
Yep.
And then the Long Beach. That's
Yes.
why I was like, yeah, man, that was cool what you're saying.
Yeah, and what's beautiful about it, I think it's like a Southeast Asian thing, like the Filipino community here is in Atlanta is like super different from like the Filipino community in like Daly City, even though Daly City is like, to me, is like the main conclaves for the Filipino community. But it's so interesting to see how that particular locale shapes, their culture. But in Atlanta, like how, it shapes our culture, So like there's one of my friends who's like Filipino, diehard like Atlanta Hawks fan compared to like over there, it's like they're all Golden State,
All dubs.
Yes. And so it's and the way we talk and the music we listen to is like it's like super different. But at the same time, like when we get together, we realize like our stories might be different, but the strength that we have within ourselves to overcome like traumas, we realize it's all the same, and that's what helps my generation and of Cambodians and other Southeast Asian communities like connect together.
Speaking of connection of Cambodian people and the Filipinos, do you guys have something like this in the Philippines? People are obsessed to get their skin whitening.
Oh yes. Like even my mom, like every time I go to Cambodia, my mom's like, hey, like she'll buy me like a sweatshirt. Like, mom, it's like 90 degrees out here. Like, it's like, no, I don't want you to get dark. Like, I'm already dark.
It's never gonna change.
It's never gonna change. But yeah, there's the colorism in Cambodia is a big thing. But I've come to learn to embrace like dark skin, but it just, for me, my perspective is what makes Cambodia unique or Southeast Asia unique. It's like we were in this like this corner of Asia where we had Indians coming over, and then you had the Chinese coming over, and it's been like a mixed culture for such a long time. But the Khmer Rouge was one of the driving forces of colorism, because it said you're not true Angkor. Like Angkor is like of the Golden Kingdom, the era of the Golden Kingdom of the Khmer Empire. It's been ingrained into like a lot of people's heads, especially my parents. Like the Khmer Rouge would say, like, oh, if you're not dark, you're not brown, you're not true Angkorian. You're not true Angkorian person. Like you're not true Khmer. But now they take that as a sign of like a way to differentiate people. Me being Khmer Krom, but me also being dark. It's like two strikes against me already.
And your Vietnamese last name.
And the Vietnamese last name, so like it's like I'm tucked into a corner here, but like when Chinese come in, we have the Khmer Chen, like Khmer Chinese, you have the Tu Cho, they like the Tu Cho, they're like Khmer Chinese, they're more fair skinned, but they're seen as like very wealthy because they have like a merchant mind. They're very they're not cavalier with their finances. They're they can manage their money. So a lot of Tu Cho families are like well off, But when you see like a dark brown Cambodian, they identify it as, oh, they work in the fields. They're like a lot of manual labor, a lot of physical labor. While those who have like lighter skin, are wealthy. They're seen as more beautiful, So that those European beauty standards, because of the French as well, and the and that kind of strife that the Khmer Rouge has created, has kind of like made colorism a driving force in Cambodia, but it's also like in Thailand as well. And how is it? How about in the Philippines? Like,
oh, it's bad.
Oh,
It's
yeah?
it's like I don't know if it's $1 billion now, but I know it's $1 million business.
Oh,
It's
wow.
insane. Like, if you want to be famous, you want to be an actress, you want to be something, you have to do it.
Wow.
They would not allow you to be like dark skinned and and be an actress or a singer or whatever you like. Our skin, we're never gonna make it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so sad, because like I have friends that are light skinned already and they're taking pills or whatever they're taking. I'm like, Dude, did you know that there's $1 million business in the West to get our skin? The
Yeah,
people
yeah.
that you're trying to be, they're paying
Someone,
millions to be like us.
us exactly. Yeah,
It's a I think it's like a I don't know if it's a mental illness. I don't think so, but it's just like just give yourself a perspective of oh, these people are tanning.
yeah,
There's even a word for it, tanning.
yep, yep. It's yeah, it's weird how like Europeans or like white folks yeah they want to be like a darker skin. They're not. I won't say they're not appreciative of of being pale, but I just think like social media played like a huge part, and and kind of like driving these Western beauty standards. Even my mom, my mom's light skinned, so so she's fine. My dad's like he's really dark, but is just the fact that yeah is that same colorism is perpetuated in not just in Asia, but I feel like in South America as well, or in the
Mm.
Caribbean, and so yeah, I wish there was a way to kind of like squash colorism, but there it was $1 billion industry. There's no
Hmm.
way, it's going to be hard to stop. But I just wish people would be more forgiving and accepting, that, even though we come from like one country, like there's going to be there's going to be like nuances, in ourselves. I'm pretty sure like in the Philippines, you have like different groups, they're like certain dialects
Mm.
or, they speak a certain way, or they have like different traditions based on the locale. Because I know it's like
Mm.
thousands of islands.
Yeah, we have like 300 dialects, I believe.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
We
recorded dialects 300, but there's probably more that was never counted.
mhm.
Yeah, but we're like 7,000 islands.
that's that's insane.
So, and it's funny because where the town I grew up in, right? The next town over, the way they speak, we speak the same language, but there will be, like you said, nuances that like, oh, this guy is from this town,
Right, right.
and that's like literally the next town over.
Yeah, yeah. It's like that in Cambodia too, where like based on the locale, there's like not 300 dialects, but there's several dialects that like you go to like northeast is like KhAmericans. That's what
Mm.
we call them, but it's like the southern province. It's like Khmer people who speak Khmer, but they have like a Thai twang to the way they speak, and they
No.
adopt some Thai words. But the more you go towards like the north, sorry, like that's northwest, but to go towards the northeast to Ratanakiri, you have like the Tampuan, you have like these they don't practice Buddhism, they practice animism.
Mm.
They speak Khmer, but they have like a totally different language. They don't have a writing system, but they all speak like Tampuan. And you go a little bit further south, like the dialects, they become more nuanced. And for me, being Khmer Krom, like I do speak a certain way, so people know that I'm Khmer Krom. Um, like so about the Bong dialect, I feel like it's the original one. From my opinion, it's the original like Khmer language because they enunciate their R's, like they trill their tongues a lot.
Mm.
So much like that. But in Khmer Krom, like even though I can do it, we don't enunciate the R's at all.
Mm.
We replace the R with an H. So like
Mm.
Rien would be hien. But it's so weird because hien it means to learn, but Rien is also means to learn, but Hien in Battambang province also means to dare someone, to do something. Like Hien Aing, like you dare me, but we say Hien Aing, like teach me, in our dialect. So it's really interesting.
That's interesting.
Once you
But
like, you know,
sorry, go ahead.
I don't know, it's just really interesting. Once like the more you travel Cambodia, like and notice like these nuances, the more you're like, wow, there's so much to my people that I don't know about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. Like I said in the Philippines, like you go to the next province, pretty much they speak a different language, different dialect. Talking about Filipino and Cambodian connection again, I saw your supernatural experience Instagram post, bro. Those things are fire. I love them.
I thought, thank you. I my first time in Cambodia, I was in fifth grade, 1996, is the first time I actually had like a really scary paranormal encounter. And my mom, she didn't tell me that she comes from a lineage of shamans. So like, so all the superstitious stuff she tells me, like, you know what, I'm not gonna put it past you, But yeah, I don't know if you're at the Noodle House, girl. I'm gonna repost it because I'm redesigning some of the imagery for that. But yeah, Noodle House Girl is my own personal experience of eating noodles, at this like decrepit, dilapidated noodle house, because it's like post-war, and then I started seeing a spirit. Like it wasn't malicious, but it looked scary as shit.
What kind of spirit?
It was a teenage girl, charred skin, like everything's like blackened, like
Oh, so you can see her face.
you like you can see her face, but it's just all black. But you see like a smile. The smile is what scares the crap out of me,
Bro.
And the thing is, like, my mom saw it first because my mom saw it behind me, and she told me not to look back. And we paid for our meal. We escaped. We left. But the thing was, when I looked back from the van, I saw her, and I almost pissed my pants. My mom's like, "I told you not to look," Like she slapped me and told me, "I told you not to look." But this is when we went back to this this hotel that we were staying. Like my mom had like this purple bag full of like just Buddhist trinkets that I've never seen, and she started chanting and like, because when we go to like the temple, we go to like a Khmer temple, they have like these set chants that they do for particular events. My mom started chanting in a way where it's like, I don't recognize any of this. It just sounds, it sounds so foreign to me. It sounds so alien, And when she took out this one particular, it's like a gold seahorn or like a seashell, and she started chanting like on top of it. It amplified the room even louder. Like her voice just echoed like 10 times. I'm like, what is this like spiritual kung fu? But my mom, like, she kept me in the bed. She was right there, and she put out these spiritual like wards around the bed so it couldn't touch us. But if my mom didn't know what she knew, I probably would have either been possessed or like I probably wouldn't make it back. But what happened was apparently during the particular noodle shop fell in hard times, so the owner, the cook, actually like murdered his own daughter and used her organs as ingredients, and that's why we ate a part of her, and that's why we were able to see her, because she was attached to us. And so how we got rid of her is my mom went to the store and bought X-Lax, so we crapped everything out, crapped everything that we ate, and I just felt so much lighter. And my mom, I love my mom to death. If it wasn't for my mom, like I would have gone crazy already, but that's the story I tell people during Halloween every year, because it's based on my experiences. And ever since then, people are like, you should be like a Cambodian horror writer. Like your stories are so good. And ever since then, I started like during lunch or like during like Mother's Day, I'm like, hey mom, tell me another ghost story, or tell me some folklore, tell me something supernatural. And ever since then, I started like crafting these stories based on what my mom has seen, like some of the local stories, and talking to other Cambodians. And so I never knew they would be this popular, because I piloted last year, and all of a sudden I started getting messages like, we're gonna make another ghost story. It was like, wow, is it that good? So hopefully next is making a short film. That's like my next project.
Oh, I can't wait. I love that. I don't know how to pronounce it. App? AHP?
Yes, the app. That's the most favorite ghost spirit amongst the Cambodians.
We have the same thing. It's called Manananggal.
Oh yeah.
But it's different, because explain your app to the people.
Yeah, so an app is typically female, and it's a witch, someone who practices magic, like Cambodian black magic. And sometimes they want to practice something that's way too strong for them. Therefore, that spell backfires on them, and they become an app. Like that curse comes onto them, and that's one way that the op happens. Another way is the person who wants more magical power, they make a pact with a demon or a malicious spirit, and the spirit allows them to borrow their powers, but in trade that the demon is able to control them at night, and that's how like the op becomes. becomes prevalent in that situation. But they're pretty much known regular girl. She can be like most beautiful woman you ever seen in the daytime, but at night she finds a spot where you cannot find her. Head just comes off, all the entrails, the spine, you see it, and she just floats around amidst this green luminance, and she looks around. She goes around scavenging for like feces, fetuses, anything that's like just like rotten flesh, rotten meat, just to sustain her magical powers. And by dawn, she comes back, redetaches, and regular girl.
It's almost exactly like that, our thing, the Manananggal. But for us, it was so pretty much the same backstory. The only difference is the physical part. So for us, the Manananggal is she will detach half of her torso, the top and the bottom, those separates, and then she'll have a bat-like wing, and of course her face is like scary demon. And then what she does is she will go around the forest. Usually she hunts men, like single man, and they'll just eat that person like a vampire.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much the same thing. Or sometimes they say she will look for a pregnant woman.
Yes,
and she'll go on top of the roof and find a hole and somehow slither her tongue and eat the fetus through that way.
Yeah. That the fetus that way is similar to in Cambodian culture. That's why when someone was pregnant, they just gave birth. Like the midwife would take the placenta and bury it somewhere deep, so that the op can't find it. Because that just gives them like a fetus in Khmer black magic is like the most strongest source of power in Khmer superstitions. So there's something called a konkoroik, which means like it's pretty much like a dried child, and pretty much even during the Khmer Rouge, they would find a female like shaman or a witch doctor to find like dried like fetuses, dry them up, turn them into amulets, and it's supposed to give you like these magical powers. And apparently just one person, I forgot his name, but yeah, it gave him the power to like steal two statues from a particular temple, so like just keeping his hotel for good luck. It's really weird, but I don't know in the Philippines if like fetus have like some sort of like powerful like grants you like great power.
I don't know about that one, but us, we're mostly like amulets made of metal that has like prayers and stuff. And we also have this thing, it's called the sinukuan. So sinukuan is come from a tree, balete tree. It looks like it's like tree with a lot of branches.
Okay.
And it's a predatory tree. So the idea is you have to find that tree, and you have to find the two trees that is bowing towards it.
Okay.
So, and then the witch doctors and the shamans will go cut that tree, the balete tree, and they'll burn it. And whatever is left, that's what they use for amulets.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I have to look that up. I'm so interested in like Southeast Asian like scary stories. They're like some of the most scariest things compared to like the West.
I know, man. The shit that we like, the thing that I have so much ghost stories. I don't even tell my kids. I'm like, I'm not telling you my stories because it will fuck you up.
Yeah. Wait till
when
you
they're
get older,
probably.
Yeah.
But going back to your art, man. Like I love your style, man. How do you make it? Like, do you draw it? Do you use Adobe? How do you make it?
So you'll be shocked, but I use AI. It's I mean I'm able to create some of these things. So how that came to be, this particular art, is I hired someone to create my horror illustrations for my scary stories, and I paid him like $75 to $100 per illustration, and then I realized that I was being ripped off because he's using AI to produce these images.
No.
And so I wasted like $700 on this guy, and I found Midjourney, and I was just playing around with it, and it's like, oh wow, so you can just type whatever you want and it'll produce an image for you, but my style is different because I'm a photographer as well. So I'll take some of the photographs that I have existing, and I would upload it, and it would learn from the AI would learn from that model, would reference that picture, learn from it, and I would combine it with other photos of mine and then add some sort of elements to it. So that's why I get like this really photorealistic like renderings. Is because of I use some of my photography work as a learning model for that particular AI. But yeah, I went through a creative block during that time, and so I started realizing, there's like this empty spot, this empty period of time where Khmer art didn't exist because of the Khmer Rouge. And I was like, I wonder, like, Khmer artists survived, if our singers survive, if our film, our directors or cinematographers survived, like, what would Khmer art look like? Or how, if the Khmer Rouge never came to power, like, how would Cambodia like perceive, or how would they create art, or how would they create fashion? And so I just went down this rabbit hole of just like typing like, oh, Khmer Apsara gown designed by Alexander McQueen. I was like, yo, this looks wild, and but the thing is, like, AI isn't perfect, so I would like sometimes the hands would be rendered wrong. So I'll Photoshop my hands from my subjects from my photography and put it over there. Or I would add like text because it can render text. So I still use my design chops to kind of like make it the way I want to. And sometimes like there'll be 4 images. One has one good part. I'll combine all the good parts of that 4 to create another image. So, but people enjoy it. Like when I heard people like, this reminds me of home. I want to go back. I want to go home so much. Or like, I feel so rooted to my Khmer identity because of your work. So like, you know what? I don't want to stop, but the way I write my prompts, my art history background is one of the reasons why I'm able to kind of like produce that style I want to. Like Alphonse Mucha was one of my favorite illustrators. So I would be like, I would type, and even machine learning is very biased. You just type in beautiful Khmer woman, it's always a light skin Khmer woman. So I just put brown skin, brown skin, beautiful Khmer woman in Apsara gown, with ornate crown, in royal Cambodian regalia, like illustrated by Alphonse Mucha to get that particular style. I try not to use styles of artists living now, but I try to use artists like styles of like painters in the 1800s, like who are long passed away, because I respect artists, and if I'm able to hire an illustrator for that particular style, I would do that. Because AI has like this, I don't know, I have moral values when it comes to like creating art and using AI. That's why on my posts, I would write, yeah, I used AI to create this. I'm just letting you know. And when I say that, I want to let people know that you can do it too, if you're really interested. And I see a lot of Filipino Instagrammers who are using AI to recreate these mythological, characters from the Philippines, like demons, spirits, gods and goddesses. So that kind of purported me to do the same thing. I want to do it for Cambodian culture too. And so yeah. So my photography came from me working at GQ, because I would just shadow the photographers and see what they do, see their lighting, and I would just replicate it at home. But my illustrations, it takes a long time to create them, but the fact that I can produce images in like 20 seconds, I kind of like, I don't want to illustrate right now because, but I'm able to if I want to. And my design background, I'm able to create titles or present it in a way that, is easily digestible and very like, very artistic, for a user to say, oh, like, there's like a story to this, or like the way he ordered, all of his images, there's like purpose to it. So, but a lot of people, I encourage a lot of Cambodian kids to use AI as a way to reference particular things, because it's helping me like get into apparel. Like I want to design some of the clothes that I've created through AI, like some of the stuff that it produced, and so it's giving me a lot of ideas on what I want to make in the future. But for this particular project, all of it's done in AI, only because they demand it. As much as I say, hey, look, it's AI, you can do it too. Like, I don't care. I want to buy your prints. I'm like, all right. I've let them know. So I'll keep producing it. But I'm more into the videography. I just started doing video like last year, and it's become like something I've always wanted to do. And so I'm also working on a video podcast of just sharing Cambodian stories, because when I went to Long Beach, people don't know anything about Atlanta Cambodians, or they didn't know we existed. Like, there's Cambodians in Atlanta? Like, what? Like, yeah, we have a budding community here for sure. So I just want to share like stories of being a Cambodian in Atlanta with, but pretty much like the Cambodian diaspora around the United States that aren't from Atlanta. So I'm trying to do like a video podcast and try to combine that too. But yeah, that artwork, yeah, is all AI driven. But I'm able to reference some of my photos and my past illustrations to drive those particular images.
And so you mentioned Mid-Journey. You just have to type it in there. Is it free or?
Yeah, it's free. So Discord is like a gamer version of Slack, and Mid-Journey exists through Discord. So you go to your channel, you create a conversation with the Mid-Journey bot, and you type /imagine and type whatever you want,
Really?
and it will produce an image for you. But yeah, I encourage some of my Cambodian artisans that are my friends to use it. One of them's she makes a lot of jewelry, so she's been using it to kind of like inspire her next jewelry designs. So it's in a way we're using it as a tool, but we're not, it's not gonna like over encompass our actual body of work.
You still have that Sokai soul,
Yes.
AI cannot take that away.
I think that's why people are drawn to my Instagram, because I do have like a personality, or like I do a little bit of, I don't say comedy, but I do a lot of humor content to kind of like get people back into the mood. But also my scary stories and my photography as well. So a lot of people come to my Instagram for particular, like a lot of like specific things. But yeah, it all has a touch of my my love in there.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, like going through your Instagram is like looking at like a evolution of an artist.
Absolutely, yes. I just the amount of growth, because before my reimagination series, I was at like 3,000 followers, and just within the last month, it rose to like 7.4 thousand. So it's just crazy to see how much people have been like how receptive they are to that particular series that I'm working on. So people want it, so I'm going to keep doing it.
You should not stop, man. I love it. I love it. Listen, before we close out, I want to ask you one more question.
Absolutely.
What's your message to people that are trying to get in touch with their heritage and their roots, maybe by Khmer or whatever else?
It's never too late to start. I understand some kids, they're reluctant to get into it, or they've had a lot of toxic trauma that's been dealt to them by their own culture. It's never too late to start, and just know that this is your journey alone. You can have whoever you want to be a part of this journey. Whoever makes you comfortable, whoever makes you safe, whoever, you look up to that are of your particular culture. And yeah, like, detach yourself away from the local community and just hop on Instagram. There's so many like amazing Khmer folks, Southeast Asian folks who are doing some amazing things, who are going through the same like trials and tribulations as you. And don't and at the same time, don't give up, and just keep doing. Don't talk about it. Just do it. And once you start doing it, you start noticing what you're doing wrong. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to learn from them, and over time, your success rate is going to get bigger and bigger. And I don't know, you'll start discovering stuff about Khmer culture. In my case, Khmer culture that I never saw or never even considered to be Khmer culture, and it's such a beautiful thing.
Wise word from a wise man. Again, Bong Sokai, Akon, so much. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me on here.
It's been such a pleasure. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Right.
Again, Bong Sokai, thank you for coming on the podcast. I really do appreciate it. Thank you, listeners, for listening. This is Aaron Deliosa from Immigrant's Life. I'll see you guys later.